Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the ARC of Fort Bend County Parent Education Support Group meeting on Zoom today. My name is Carrie Axtell. I'm the Advocacy and Youth Programs Director, and our group meets virtually on the second Thursday each month throughout the school year. We like to start with an educational presentation, so I invite you to stick around if you'd like afterwards for the support group, where you can ask questions and share your experiences and seek additional resources if you'd like. The ARC of Fort Bend County is a nonprofit organization. We were established in 1968, and we have programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We ensure opportunities for people with IDD and their families to maximize their quality of life within our community. We do that through disability rights advocacy for and with people with IDD, and we provide information about community services and resources, organize resource fairs, support groups for parents, as well as teen and adult siblings. We also hold several social and recreational programs for people in their teens, 20s, into mature adulthood. We are also the home of the largest Special Olympics delegation for adults in the region, offering 11 different sports with over 130 athletes. If you'd like to learn more about what we do here at the ARC, I invite you to visit our website, arcoffortbend.org, and check out our Instagram and Facebook page. We're pretty active on the social media. And you can also reach out to me if you'd like. I put my information there in the chat box. And if you have any questions during the presentation, if you'd like to drop your questions in the chat box as well, I'm happy to read those to Lindsay, but she's also open to you. If you have a question, just stop her and ask your question. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We have some exceptional professionals right here in Fort Bend County, and they share their knowledge and expertise with us. This month, we are pleased to welcome Lindsay Castellanos with Child Advocates of Fort Bend, presenting Netsmartz Parent Internet Safety Training. So Lindsay is the Community Outreach Coordinator for Child Advocates for Fort Bend, and she facilitates child abuse prevention and education trainings for educators, youth service organizations, faith-based groups, parents, and she also speaks with students at all grade levels about abuse and neglect, and gives them tools to stay safe. We're very happy to have Lindsay here today presenting to the ARC of Fort Bend County. Lindsay began her work with the agency in 2011 as a forensic interviewer. Lindsay has interviewed over 1,500 children within that time frame. And prior to her work at Child Advocates of Fort Bend, Lindsay investigated allegations of child abuse and neglect for Child Protective Services in Harris County. And she has over 14 years of experience in working with abused and neglected children. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Baylor University, and she's passionate about helping families and children. She strives to grow and learn new things, and she enjoys spending time with her husband and her children. We're so glad that you're here today, Lindsay. Welcome, and thank you for presenting to us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carrie. It's such an honor to be among my peers, parents, and I do consider that to be a privilege to be able to be with all of you. So thank you, Carrie, for your gracious introduction. I am Lindsay Castellanos, Community Outreach Coordinator for Child Advocates of Fort Bend. I just wanted to, well, before we get started, Carrie, I just want to make sure, tell me what time I need to wrap up.
So we usually wrap up by noon, just to kind of see if people want to take off or do other things. But we definitely want to have your contact information, though, which I see you've already left there in the chat. And then again, I will also, Lindsay has agreed to share her PowerPoint. So when I get the video is done processing and I've got her PowerPoint, all registrants, because I had 6 registered, and I know as usual, life gets hectic and people aren't able to log on, and people may come and go, but I will make sure all who registered get a copy.
Yes. So thank you for all that housekeeping stuff. If you do have a question and you just have like a burning question, and you're like, I'm not gonna be able to stay on this the whole time, you're free to interrupt me at any point, either via chat or just like turn your mute off and let's just chat. Internet safety is a really broad topic. There's so many parts of this that we can cover. The thing that I'm going to do today is going to feel, in some sense, a little bit more introductory, in the sense of like we're not diving really deeply into a certain app or a certain platform. But I think sometimes we get we're so focused on those things that we don't realize that there's some broader context that we can bring into different areas of the internet safety and devices and communication and all of those things. And so we're going to kind of broaden things out just a little bit in order to focus in on what's most important. So the first thing that I want to do is just kind of introduce our agency and talk about who we are. Netsmartz is a program that we use from National Centers for Missing and Exploited Children. If you are not familiar with them, they have some really amazing goals. They are the center that is helping when children are missing or abducted. They also provide tools for parents to educate the community about the internet and about the risks to the internet, and then just providing prevention and some assistance with those types of investigations. So we're really grateful that their content is made available to us. They have a host of resources that you can look at and peruse on their website. And so, but a little bit about our agency. So we're Child Advocates at Fort Bend. I am in our community engagement team, but we have two main programs of focus. Our first program that started our agency in 1991 is our CASA program. Many people know us for CASA. It stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And it is a program that is for children who are placed in foster care by Child Protective Services. And then we have volunteers who are assigned to every case in Fort Bend County. We have a 100% match rate. And so our volunteers come in and they are boots on the ground, walking with that child through the process, through the legal process, and trying to find a safe and permanent home for them, whether that's returning home with their parents or if it's being placed in another setting. That's the very briefest version of that. But then the other program that we have is our Children's Advocacy Center, and it was started in 1996. And their goal is to lessen the trauma for children who have experienced abuse and neglect. The majority of the children that are served in the Children's Advocacy Center have alleged sexual abuse. Some of them are also victims of very serious physical abuse or neglect and witnesses to violent crimes. And so the way that children enter the Advocacy Center is through law enforcement and CPS investigations. We're not an investigative agency, but we do assist law enforcement and CPS in their investigations. And so we have forensic interviewing and then a host of other services, free therapy, case management, criminal court advocacy, coordination of services that allows us to wrap around that child and that family while they're going through that difficult situation. And so if children have made an outcry of abuse, particularly of sexual abuse, then oftentimes they come into the Children's Advocacy Center to be interviewed. The interview is a fact-finding interview. It's just for the person. We have highly skilled, trained forensic interviewers that are trained to know how to talk to children and how to ask them questions. We interview children ages 2 to 18, and then over the age of 18, if they were the victim when they were younger, or if they have developmental delays, or if they have some other significant things that are just, it would be the right setting for them to come in and talk in our agency. And then we do interview verbal children. We have techniques and trainings that we have been taught to be able to interview any child that really needs that setting to be able to talk. So that's a little bit about our agency. I wanted to, I'm going to skip ahead here because I meant to show you a video, but I didn't do it because sometimes I talk over the videos. Okay, so the thing that we're going to talk about today is about, so another thing I wanted to just mention really quickly is Netsmartz has programming for kids K through 12. So if you have children, there are so many great resources available that you can go through with them online. And I think it's just really important for parents to be the primary source of that type of information. But that takes parents being equipped and knowing, how do I say what I need to say? How what is age appropriate? What is developmentally appropriate? How can I say this in a way that they will understand the significance of what's happening? Because it's hard to explain things like that are on the internet. It's so abstract in some ways. And so it's really hard for us, I think, as parents, to be able to explain to our kids in a way that they understand. But you know your kids best and you know what will work for them. And I empower you to use that skill that you have to be able to help your kids navigate this process, because the internet isn't going to go away, right? So let's talk about where we're going today. So we're going to talk about computers and cell phones, gaming consoles, e-readers, tablets. My kid has a camera that has internet access. It's just a camera. It's not a phone, but it still has internet access. The things that they're doing at school, when they go over to a friend's house, when they're at another family member's house, when they're at programming that they're at, a parent's night out, or they're at, with the babysitter or whatever. All of these places have technology. Even when we go into the store, like all of these places have technology. So we want to know how to talk to our kids about that and what to say. The first place we want to start is, what are our kids doing online? Okay, so a lot of kids are on social media. Young kids, we're thinking about, the learning apps that they're playing with and things like that. The first thing I would say is, as a parent, if you haven't introduced a new part of the internet to your child, do your research first and decide how you want to present it to them before they start asking for it. And that works best in the situation where you have a very young child and then you kind of get to grow as they do. That's not the situation that a lot of parents find themselves in. Most of us are caught off guard because all of a sudden our kids are all over the internet and we just didn't realize that this is going to be the thing. And that happens early. It happens in elementary school. And so, we can kind of slow things down and really look at, what's the content that's available on those platforms. Even on, we might think like, well, my kids are playing on YouTube Kids. There's nothing to worry about there. But unfortunately, there are some people who have bad intentions and they just want to exploit kids to things that they are just not supposed to see. Even when we're looking at media on, TV, looking at commercials and things like that, there's a lot of opportunity for us to have conversations. And so, we just want to make sure that we are thinking about those things. Before I go on, I know we just have a couple people on here right now, but I just want to know, are there any devices or any platforms that your kids are currently on that you do want to talk about, that you have questions about? Because we're going to be really broad for the most part.
Yeah, and I would say, so for mine anyways, and the other participants, please speak up, because I know we have some different varying ages. So I shared with Lindsay just a little bit ago, I have two teenagers. So a lot of them are, mine, of course, are on the social media for sure. And even in high school, like they're on various apps that are required just for them to just do their schoolwork. So, but social media, of course, is huge for the teenagers, the Snapchat, the Instagram. So that's a huge concern of mine, having a teenager, of course, is just who they may meet that they think is another teenage girl, but is really, a predator out there. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's so with the platforms that they're using, and we're going to go into this in more detail, but the platforms that they're using, when they're setting them up, knowing what their settings are, is their profile public? Who are they following? Who's following them? Those type of things. And then a lot of the advice that I have, and that a lot of our internet crimes against children detectives will tell you, is a lot of the advice that we could give you is, being connected to your kids and knowing, like, who are they talking to? What are they talking about? Monitoring that, going in through, their feed and kind of looking at what's going on and seeing, is there something concerning to kind of bring up And then how do we do that judiciously in a way that's, understanding that they're kids and they're exploring the world and they're trying to figure it out and they're going to make mistakes, and, having some boundaries and some guidelines in place. When we think about internet safety, I want to
Melody shared, sorry, just real quick. So Melody shared that she has younger children and her children use iPads and they like to use YouTube Kids a lot. And then Catherine's asking about, are there any resources for special needs families specifically that maybe they could be thinking about?
Yeah. So for special needs families, Netsmartz does have some resources, I think. And then there is another resource that I will share with you. I don't think that the public has access to it, but in my role, I'm a facilitator for another training called Child Safety Matters. And they have a training that's specifically for children with IDD or intellectual disability. So I will get that information to you. I don't know, like I said, if it's public or not, but I'm happy to share it this way because I can do that.
Okay, great. And that, I guess, can be part of the resources that later on when you get the PowerPoint and stuff to me, and then I can send that to all the registrants.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when we're thinking about being online and just kind of like on a broad sense of how we look at this, the example that I want to give is kids wearing seatbelts. Okay, so internet safety is just like car safety. When our kids are little, when they're babies, we buckle them. And then as they get older or they gain the ability to do that, we allow them to participate in the ability to buckle themselves in. And then as they continue to get older, they gain more and more independence, and then it becomes reminders and that type of thing. But we expect compliance. We are not going to move the car or we're going to pull the car over if they unbuckle themselves. And so we have to think about internet safety in the same sense, because I think what the fear of a parent is like, well, I don't want to be too harsh and I don't want to be, too overbearing and that kind of thing. Or it's helping my child in this way and this part of it is good, and I don't want to take that from them because it adds so much value to their life in some way. It's a balancing act for sure. And you have to make the best decision that's for you and your family, and what's right for you and what's right for another family may look different, and how you enforce the rules may look different. But I do think having some set plans in place of this is what's going to happen, or this is how we're going to handle this situation, and holding ourselves as parents accountable for that, because we're helping our kids when we reinforce those boundaries. Kids need boundaries. They like boundaries. Even though they don't like them, they like them because it helps them feel secure. It helps them to know that it's okay. When I get out of line, someone's going to pull me back in and is going to help me. And I just think that that's really, really important for parents to hear that, because I think that's not what we hear a lot of times. Is like, we need to be a little more lenient. And I think we just need to be careful when it comes to the internet, how lenient we are. So with that in mind, this at the top says online solicitation. We're going to talk more about online solicitation in a minute, but these are some of the apps that are the most popular. And I'm going to just kind of go through them really quickly. If you're not familiar with them, most of them you probably are. The first one here is TikTok. Of course, that's like all of those videos. Some of them are hilarious. And we get TikTok dances and TikTok challenges, and some of the TikTok challenges are great and some of them are not. I don't recommend that app for anybody really, that's not like high school age, honestly. And I know that that's really way older than a lot of the users that are on there, but there is a lot of content that's just not okay for kids to see, and it's hard to filter through that. This little ghost guy here is Snapchat, and Snapchat, you snap pictures and send to people, and then it disappears after a certain amount of time. And I think kids feel more emboldened that they are not being recorded, or, that's like, it goes nowhere. So, okay, I can, kind of get away with more. And I think that's what the content creators, that's what they wanted. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people are on these apps that are older. It's kind of like kids going into an older setting where they normally wouldn't be. You know, if we were all in public together, kids probably wouldn't be showing up on most of these, you know, events, if we were to call them that. And this is Discord. So it started out as being a platform where people were doing online gaming, and then they would come into Discord and they would talk about the games that they were playing and, you know, cheating or, you know, how to win games and all that kind of stuff. It's morphed into something else. There's a lot of content on Discord that is dangerous. And there are a lot of people on Discord that are out to do harm, you know, intend harm for kids. Instagram, I think everybody knows what that is. WhatsApp, another chatting platform for people to be able to message each other. And then Omegle is this one here. And Omegle is like a roulette. You log in and then you just get selected with another stranger to talk to. And you just are talking to that person and you don't know who they are and they don't know who you are. And so if a child is logging into that, and I have heard children as young as 4th and 5th grade getting on Omegle because they want to meet people from around the world and they think that that's fun, and that's very interesting and enticing, but the people on the other end of it are often adults. And so there's some really concerning things there. What are some things we can look for if kids are on these apps and there's a problem is obsessive phone use. It says during class, but this could be anywhere. Like they just cannot not have their phone and they really over respond. So whatever that looks like, you know, they really just have to have it with them, and we're concerned about what they're looking at. And then, you know, missing school or trying to avoid certain situations because they're scared of a certain area, or if they start self-harming and that type of behavior.
Lindsay, we did have a question about what are the spelling of the two blue apps?
Two blue apps. Yeah. So I'll just type it here, because if I try to spell it out loud.
Discord, right? That gaming one.
One is Discord, and then Omegle is the other one, and I think that's how you spell Omegle.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the two blue apps that I mentioned. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's kind of transition here just a little bit. So I kind of already alluded to this, you know, that it's important for us to put filters. There are tons of different apps or platforms that you can use to filter content, to monitor a phone, to monitor apps. You know, there's great resources out there for that. I don't particularly endorse one of those over the other. I think it's just based on the parents, what's the best fit for their family, but nothing can replace communicating with your kids. Nothing can replace having conversations with them. I think that the best opportunity for conversations is when they make mistakes, because it allows us to be real about the fact that we're just human and that things are not going to go perfectly. And when they don't go perfectly, that it's okay, and that we will be there with them and we will figure it out together. So some of the things that you can ask about with your kids, I invite you to, you know, look at the app with them. If we're deciding on a new app, they're asking you for an app. Let's say that you have a child and they're like, I really want Snapchat. I really, really want Snapchat. I just want to snap with my friends. All my other friends have it. I really, really, really want it. Then I would say, okay, well, let's look at it together. I don't know that much about it. Let's download it. Let's look at it together. I'll create my own username and login as the adult, and we'll look at it together and we'll kind of see what the features are, what are the settings that we can put on, and all of that. And then I might, you know, from there, you can decide, like, how are we going to go about this? What are going to be the rules? I think having profile settings set to private it's very important. I think talking about login information is very important, how to protect that information. The other thing that we want to talk about is, you know, what are the other apps that you're using? Show me how to use that. Oh, you're playing this game. Show me how you play that game, or watch them as they're playing it. Play with them. Because you can learn a lot by them just kind of showing you. If we sit down with our kids and we're asking them pointed questions about, okay, now show me this, now show me that, they're not going to do it. Usually it's better if we're doing it side by side. And especially with kids who, maybe it's hard to communicate that kind of stuff. Maybe they don't have all of the words for all of that. That's very overwhelming. So if we're, showing what we're doing and they're showing what they're doing, oh, and then you went here and now you can do this. I didn't know you could do that. That's kind of cool that you can, share resources with a friend on this game, or, you can see that your buddy is playing over here and, it looks like so-and-so is talking to you, and what do you talk about with them? It looks like you talk to them a lot, what makes you, interested in this person or whatever. Those kinds of questions are going to be super helpful for getting information that we might not normally get. Asking those open-ended questions, that comes from my interview training. If we ask open-ended questions, we just don't know the kind of information that we could receive from our kids, by just asking, like, tell me everything about this. Like, what do you like about it? What else do you like about it? And just kind of letting them add to, like, is there anything else that you think I should know? Is there anything else you'd like for me to know about that? Those are great questions to ask because they feel so important. It's like, oh, I get to teach you something, where adults feel like, kids might feel like adults know everything. Here's kids being able to teach us something. So, all right. So, some safety and internet security things that we're going to talk about: inappropriate content, online privacy, sexting, online enticement, and cyberbullying. With online inappropriate content, this, there's a lot that we can talk about with our kids, in a way that is appropriate. Okay, so we want to think about developmentally what are they understanding and what is okay to talk about. We don't want to scare our kids just for the sake of helping them to be safe online. With young kids, we can keep it really simple, being polite, not looking at things that are inappropriate. What does inappropriate look like? How do we say that in a different way that kids can understand? People without clothes on, things that are violent, things that are scary, even content that's just scary, that's like horror film type content, like that is not appropriate for some, for young kids, and for some kids, even when they're older, especially if they're sensitive to that. And so we can just talk about, like, hey, we don't want to see that kind of stuff. That's not okay for you. Like, and just say, like, if that happens, come up and, come get me and we'll turn it off and we'll figure out, what's going on. But keeping it very simple is a great way for us to be able to still communicate our expectations and what's safe, but also letting them know, that it's okay for them to come to you. If things pop up on their screen, there's videos on Netsmartz that show a situation where a child is playing a game and a pop-up comes up and he tries to get rid of it and it keeps popping up and popping up and popping up. Watching that video with your kids, if you don't, to show them what that looks like, is a great idea, because it's hard to explain it to them. How are you going to facilitate that happening online on your own? You can't. But if you're showing them this video, then you can say, hey, if that happens, just come get me. If you're not sure, if it starts asking you for password information or a credit card or any of that, like, just come get me and I'll help you figure out what we need to do, rather than them just taking on the, the ability to do that on their own, because maybe it's not something that they should do. And it's tricky. They feel tricked into doing something. And then not trusting everybody that we meet online. I tell my kids, like, my kids are younger, so I tell my kids, like, listen, being online, it's like being with strangers. And when we're out in public, I would never just allow you to go and have a conversation with a stranger by yourself. I would be there with you. So if you are, if you're online and someone's trying to talk to you, like, I don't really want that to happen. So I set their platforms and their games to where they're not talking to other people, because we wouldn't do that in normal everyday, interactions. So with older kids, as they get older, we definitely want to have conversations with them about being kind online, about how to deal with cyberbullies, about how to deal with sexting, people asking them for inappropriate pictures, and how for them to determine, like, what do they think about that? And is that appropriate? You know, what can happen if they send it? Again, it's very hard to explain this information, just having a conversation. Netsmartz has more videos about that type of content that illustrates that then you can just go back and say, like, look, you know, we saw what happened here. What do you think about it when that girl sent that picture? What do you think about when that boy sent that picture? Boys and girls, it happens to boys and girls. So what happens, you know, and what are the consequences? You know, and how would you feel if you knew somebody that happened to you, that kind of thing. All right. Let's see. My computer's just kind of freezing, so give me a second. It's trying to load my content and this at the same time. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
We are going to skip this video for the sake of time, but I would encourage you. This is just a video that's from Netsmartz that was just demonstrating some of the information that we talked about talking to friends online and what that looks like. It's a great video to go through with young kids.
Back.
Let me see if I can keep this moving.
So
Okay.
the Netsmartz then is something that we can access through the child
Yes.
advocate website, or
You can access it through Netsmartz, and I'm going to send you the link to like their video list of information. One thing that I'll say, just me personally, and I mean, I'm not the expert on everything, but I've done this a lot. So, but what I did with my own kids is when we decided to start introducing technology to them and allowing them some internet access, we went through, Netsmartz has curriculum that you can go through, video and discussion questions that parents and kids can go through together. And so we watched the videos together, and then we did the discussion together. And we've done it a couple of times actually for both of my kids, because I think it's just good for them to be reminded of these things. Okay, so we've already kind of talked about what inappropriate content is and what can happen. One of the things that I think is important for us to know is that when we see inappropriate content, it really changes our brain chemistry. And it can really have bad effects for children. They're not meant to see this type of content. It's not okay for them to see this type of content, and it can really diminish their self-esteem. It can cause them to have behavior issues, and just it can be very disruptive to their brain growth. And so we just want to be mindful of that and the things that they're seeing, even if it's so strange because, you know, PG rating systems, or the rating system for movies and content like from 10 or 20 years ago, is way different than it is now. And so I just try to view everything that my kids are going to see before they do, and think about what is actually happening in those videos. Even when we're thinking about, you know, the games that they're playing and that type of thing, or YouTube Kids, you know, watch those video channels together with your kids. If you have a selected group of, you know, we're watching video content from these different places, that's great. But let's watch it together and just see what it's looking like, and see what are some of the things that are on there. And is there any opportunity for discussion? So if they see something that's not appropriate, we want to make sure, first of all, that we aren't overreacting. Prepare yourself ahead of time. It's going to happen. And think about, what is my game plan going to be? Think about that with, you know, if you have a partner, or you're co-parenting, or your spouse, other people who are helping you. How will you handle it when your child sees inappropriate content online? We want to make sure, first of all, that they get the ability to tell you what happened as much as they can, or they get to show you what happened and demonstrate what happened. And then just let them know, like, it's okay. It's, you know, if they went there purposefully, or if they didn't go there purposefully, I think in the beginning, unless it's becoming an ongoing issue, I think it's important to say, you know, it's not your fault. You know, you don't, if we go into blaming, the real point that we're trying to drive home with our kids is, I want you to be safe. And if we go into blaming, we're not getting to the real point. And I think that that's really what's important in this situation, is for us to get to that point of, the point is, I want you to be safe. The point is, I want you to know how to handle it. If we go into blaming, we're kind of getting off base and trying to assign whose fault is it? And really, it's just, this is something that happens, and how are we going to handle that situation? And you can disagree with me if you want to. Parents are allowed to have their own views on that for sure. But I just think it's helpful for us to think about, what is the end goal that we're trying to get to? Is it really, what is the end goal? Answering any questions that they have about what they saw, I'll just use another example. Like, there was a child that said, oh, I've seen, people online and they didn't have clothes on. Okay. So what questions do you have about that? And then they can ask whatever questions they have. Maybe they don't have any questions. Maybe they need to think about it and come to you later. You can let them know. You can come tell me anytime. And then, helping them with reporting it. We need to let other people know, because we don't want this to happen to other kids, and things to happen like that. So what we want them to do is, if they see inappropriate content online, before we introduce them to a new device or a new website or a new app, what should they do? Turn off their screen. If they see something inappropriate, turn off their screen. They can go back out of that. They can back out of the application if they, know how to do that. And it's different on every application. And that's why I say if they know how to do that, because they might be frozen and I don't know what to do with this. They can just bring it to you. Tell a trusted adult about what happened. We can report things on apps. So every app that they have should have a reporting mechanism for they have some kind of guideline for their app. And so they can report it as inappropriate content. You can see, accidentally one time, on Facebook, I accidentally reported something that was inappropriate. It wasn't, but I just, clicked on the wrong thing. So there should be a way for you to be able to report it. If you're not sure how to report something, YouTube, Google, just how do I report on this app? And it should show you either a video or a step-by-step. This is how, even the apps should have this is how you report on our app. And then if it's something that's illegal, you can go to the cyber tip line and you're able to report on the cyber tip line. Netsmartz is coming out with a new platform where they are allowing people to come in, and if they have been exploited, they can also talk about those things on that platform and they will help get those things removed, because it's really hard to remove that type of content. All right, we're going to kind of move ahead a little bit because we're kind of running short on time. Just one thing I want to say really quickly is, I think as I was going through this presentation, just a reminder to talk to your kids about these things. We know as parents, the things that we shouldn't post online, or we don't want to have a reputation online, because that's going to affect us in our networking and our job hunting and our professional careers. But for kids, they may not always think of those things. So we want to make sure that we're telling them, we can't post illegal behavior. If you post that type of behavior, it has consequences. And we hear stories in the news of kids who are posting, violent behavior, or guns, or drugs, or drinking and partying. That stuff is going to come up in school. And if they're a school age kid and they are, they potentially could be in trouble with their school, even if it didn't happen on campus, because a lot of schools have some rules about that type of stuff, especially when it comes to violent things, and that kind of thing, and hate speech, of course, too, when we're thinking about cyberbullying and that type of thing. So we just want to have those conversations with our kids and let them know, of course, we also don't want them to have this type of behavior just in general, but if we're seeing it or other people are posting it, our kids don't need to be the one to share it. We don't want them to be part of this conversation at all. And so just reminding them of that as well. Okay, online privacy. So we want to talk to our kids about what's okay and what's not okay. So this, again, is going to be related to your personal views, and then also your kids and just where they are. What's okay to share, what's not okay to share. Younger kids, what we recommend is, if somebody asks you your name, okay, you can tell them your first name. You could tell them your favorite color. Is that okay to share? Yeah, that's okay to share. Could you tell them your dog's name? Sure. Could you show them a picture of your dog? Could you show them a picture of your face? Maybe that's a yes for you. Maybe it's a no. And then as they get older, some other personal information. Is it okay for them to post about their school? Is it okay? There's a new app out that's called Be Real. Kids love it. They get to post a Be Real picture of themselves, and the phone comes in and says, you have 2 minutes to post a picture of yourself. First of all, I think that's distracting for school, but in another sense, the settings for that particular app is already set to tag your location when you send it. You have to go into the app and turn location off. And so for kids who are posting Be Reals and they're showing them to a whole group of people online that they're online friends with, now all of those people know where they are. And if that's with your friend Sally down the street that that's Sally, like that's one thing, because you and Sally know each other in real life. But if it's with a whole bunch of people that you don't know what their intentions are and, why they would, what they could use that information for. And I'm going to show a video here in just a few minutes that's going to kind of demonstrate that. But, and then when talking about streaming services and creating videos and creating content, kids want to do all the TikTok things and be TikTok famous and be YouTube famous and be dude perfect and, all of these things that it looks so fun, but it's like those people, like when we think about it, like I ask my kids, well, what do you know about those people outside of that? Do they show where they live? Do they show, what part of the country they're in? Do they show, their kids? Do they show this, that, and the other? No, they're trying to protect, that personal information. And so we want to do the same thing in our family. So, okay. The next thing that I want to talk about is just having this brief conversation with your kids from a very young age. We don't give out passwords. Don't give out your home address, your number, your email address, those kinds of information, even to friends, even to your boyfriend, to your girlfriend, to your best friend, because somebody could have hacked into their device and could have hacked into their app, and they're asking you for that information. It's not really them, it's really somebody else. Or, that relationship goes bad and now they have access to all of that content that you never intended for everybody to see. And now they can go in and they have control over that and they can post things and things like that. And, that is just a horrible experience for a child to go through. And so we just want to make sure that kids are being really careful about that type of information. There's so many online scams, of kids getting messages on their phones or in their, personal messages, click this link to go to this, and we're going to send you XYZ. And some kids are very, very, very gullible to that type of stuff. And so we just want to make sure that we're telling our kids, hey, if you get a link, please don't click on it. Let me look at it with you and let's decide together. And that's a lot of extra work for parents, but it's also really good because it helps us to make sure that our kids are safer online, because hackers tend to target children and children's accounts because they know that kids don't know as much about how to protect themselves. And so they are going after those kids' accounts. And sometimes parents don't know until many years later, that their kids' personal information has been leaked online. It has been used to open, credit cards and things like that. So we just want to make sure that we're being very mindful of that. We also want our kids to know that it's a red flag for somebody to ask them if they are asking them for their address, they're trying to send them a gift. Gifts are never for free. And so if somebody is asking to send them gifts, or if you're getting packages or they're getting gifts that you don't know where they came from, asking questions about where did you get this? Who did you get this from? A lot of the time we think, well, we would know for sure if that happened. But sometimes kids will hide those things. If they're getting gifts and packages from somebody that's trying to entice them online, then they will try to hide those things. And so if we see that, that's a huge red flag to try to figure out where did this come from and what's going on with this situation. Okay, so like I said, we are going to move really quickly. I'm going to skip through a whole bunch of slides, but you're going to get the slide deck from me and you can go through it, and it'll have some of the notes and things that we talked about in here. So the things I didn't cover directly will be on here, but I want to show this video because I want you to see how quickly we see online solicitation growing really rapidly. It is really sad to me, the number of kids who are being solicited online at such a young age, as young as 7, being solicited online, and how cunning perpetrators are and predators are, and how good they are at tricking kids into doing things that we would think that they would never do. And so I just want to show this video really quickly and we can talk about it and then we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to let the video play.
So a typical sextortion case would be that a child was in a forum, in a game, and they just start chatting. It starts out like anybody else. You're just talking about the game or talking about whatever forum they're in. It could be on anything. And that predator is a manipulator. They're very good at what they do. They know how to pick up on cues from that child. So if that child got in a fight with their mom, his or her mom, that predator is going to play on that. Like, I'm here for you. You can talk to me. Your mom's a jerk. Your mom's this.
So one of the scenarios we've seen when it comes to young girls is that it's going to be a teenage boy. They're going to look if the child's social media profile is open. They're going to try to profile who she likes, what her likes are, and what that would look like for her if she met somebody online. And then that's who they're going to become.
As a predator, you can actually create an online profile that matches the preferences of that child. So as that child interacting with that fake account and they're getting catfished, what they are experiencing is this super arousing stimuli where the catfish or the predator is telling them what they want to hear. They tell them about their favorite music, about their favorite food, about their favorite sports, and even pick a profile picture that looks like their favorite love interest.
I know you've been waiting for this for a while. So I wanted to give you something special.
They're absolutely going to become that dream person, that Prince Charming for her. And it's going to be slow. It's going to be whatever she's first initially comfortable with, and then it's going to progress. Now, when I say slow, that doesn't mean that it's days, it's weeks, it's months. It could literally be 2 conversations in one day. We are aware of cases that we have had a child take off their clothes within an hour of meeting somebody online. Scenario B, we'll use a boy because it's important that we keep reiterating that boys have this happen to them. So sometimes with the boys, it could be that they think they're talking to a female, particularly like maybe an adult female. It's less like a teen type of situation and more with an adult. And then that adult will say to them, maybe like, I'll send you a photo of me naked if you'll send me a photo of you naked. And so the boy sends the one image to who he thinks is a girl, and then he's expecting another one back. And what he gets instead is, now I'm going to share this with everybody.
And then it can turn. If the child gets nervous or scared, then it turns into the threatening. Okay, well, you sent me that image of you. I'm going to send it to all of your friends on Facebook, all of your friends on Instagram. So you need to keep doing it. And then the child's scared and they don't know that they can just stop. They're children. They're scared. They think that whatever this predator says is true. It can get really dark really quickly. It never starts out as send me a nude picture of yourself. No, it's a slow transition. And then it's too late and the child feels overwhelmed and then they continue because they're afraid. Sextortion is manipulating a child to send inappropriate pictures, to do inappropriate things on camera, or to eventually meet up with the predator. We as humans leak out information. We leak out information when we're on the internet and we're on chatting sites. it's going to happen. They're going to take that information and use it against you. They're going to talk about the football games this weekend. They're going to talk about homecoming. They're going to talk about the things that relate to you. They're never going to let it slip that they, have a job or they live in, their mother's basement or whatever it is. They are never going to reveal to you the true nature of who they are. So the best thing you can do is never have conversations, never share anything with anybody unless you absolutely know who they are. You know it's your best friend Susie who lives down the street because it's the same number you've been using for 3 years or the same, ID. But we think, oh, it's just the internet and it's a 16-year-old kid. They're not.
You may have a child who, because of what was going on online with them, can't or won't vocalize that to the parents, so they're trying to hide it. But they're going to show it. They're going to want to avoid certain places because maybe they're afraid the perpetrator is there. They don't want to go back to school because they think that whoever they were talking to online was a student or a teacher, so they don't know. So they're going to try to avoid that contact with them. They're going to not sleep well anymore. They're going to potentially either gain weight or lose weight. Unfortunately, cutting is also something that our little ones are, when they're being victimized, that they'll do. And the shame is causing them to want to fold in on themselves and just not talk to anybody and try to deal with it on their own, but they just can't.
And I think from what we've seen, it typically only stops when the child either tells an adult or the offender is identified in some kind of law enforcement investigation.
All right, so that's kind of the deep video in a sense of, just how quickly things can turn when we think about sextortion. We saw this type of crime just kind of blow up during the pandemic and in the afterwards, because as we were being at home, we were online, our kids were online. And so it's just grown exponentially. Like they had 100% growth in cases through NCMEC in this particular area during the year of 2020 to 2021. So, and a lot of the cases that we see in our Children's Advocacy Center also have an online component that we are now asking about. So what do we do as parents if this is the thing that we are facing, or the thing that we're trying to prevent, hopefully? First is talking to your kids about relationships in age-appropriate ways. Our advice, or the research shows that kids often learn about sexual acts beginning as early as 4th grade. So having conversations with kids about that topic. There's a lot of culture and a lot of religious beliefs around, how to talk to kids about sex and sexuality and those things. There are resources available, books to help you with having those conversations. I think books are a great demonstration tool, not to demonstrate sex, but to talk about relationships and what relationships look like and what healthy relationships look like. And to put into, illustration, the things that we have a hard time articulating. Because again, a lot of these concepts are very abstract, and for young kids or kids who have, intellectual disabilities, it can be very difficult to talk about these things. And so having a resource like a book that you can go back to over and over and over again and repeat, I think is a great strategy to use. And I just encourage you as parents, just start having the conversation, because then you can kind of help with that situation as much as possible. For book recommendations, there are some really good ones out there. The book that I'm thinking of is, it escapes me now. I'll send the link, Carrie, to you. It's like, it's a miracle, or you're a miracle, or something. And it goes from how relationships start all the way through the birth process and then beyond into later adulthood, people, And so, and it talks about private body parts, and it talks about, how children are conceived. And so I think that it was a good resource. But any book that you are going to use, I would say read it yourself first, read it a couple of times, and you get your thoughts on it before you introduce it to your kids, so that you can kind of anticipate what the questions might be. Setting some policies about meeting up online. We don't want kids meeting up with anybody offline that they don't know in real life. If they're like, oh, I know this person, they go to my school, then set up a plan as a parent for how that's going to work. Talk to your kids about the warning signs, talk to your kids about the ways that they could get tricked online. Kids won't know how to handle a situation unless we present it to them and say, okay, if this were to happen, what would you do? And I've heard parents say things like, well, I want my kids to, watch the news because then they're going to hear about how horrible this is. I don't recommend that. Personally, I think that that's not the best way to handle it. I think there are other resources that we can use, books, videos, resources from prevention programs that can illustrate those things without it being so scary, because we don't want them to be so scared that now they feel like they don't know what to do or that it's their fault. One really important thing I would just say really quickly, we're going to have to get off of here, is when we talk to our kids, one of the things we want to talk about with language is I encourage parents to use other language besides don't let someone. So instead of saying don't let someone do that to you, we can say like it's not safe for someone to do that to you. If that happens, you come tell me. But when we say don't let someone do that to you, it puts the ownership on the child that they allowed something to happen to them, or that they got tricked into something and they allowed it, and they didn't. And so we want to make sure that we're just putting that ownership back on the person who was actually doing the harm. And so just letting them know, like, it's not your fault. It's okay to come tell me. Let's have open conversations, that type of thing. If you feel like your child is in danger online, call the police. Call the police of your local jurisdiction. If it happened in, if the person's living in another place or whatever, law enforcement will figure that out. You can report to the cyber tip line. The last thing I wanted to say too, we didn't get to talk about bullying, unfortunately, today, but I do want to give you this resource. So these are some resources that are available online. Officer Gomez, the Parenting in a Tech World, and Wait Until 8th. That's all on Facebook. You can go to those groups. I'm not there to, say if everything that they're posting is great or not. The Parenting in the Tech World is a Facebook group, and you can go in and ask questions about, how do I do this? How do I do that? My kid's doing this. What are the settings for this program? That kind of thing. What do you recommend? And get advice from other parents. I think that is an okay place to go, but I don't recommend it to be your primary place of learning things. It's from other parents, because we're all just learning together. Officer Gomez is a school resource officer. He has great information about the things that are happening from a school perspective. And then Wait Until 8th was started by two mothers that wanted to encourage parents to wait until 8th grade to allow their children on social media. And they have a lot of great content about the statistics around social media use, and some of the ways to just normalize to your child that they're not the only one who doesn't have social media. Common Sense Media reviews every type of media that you can imagine and offers information about what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the dangers, how do you use this media, even down to movies, videos, books, any type of resource. They're kind of looking at it. And then Mama Bear Effect is another nonprofit that was started by a mom up in the Northeast, and she creates content about how to prevent child sexual abuse and how to have resources for parents to talk to their kids about sex and sexual abuse. And she has content that is available for parents of children who have disabilities. Okay, so that's kind of that. So again, I'll just say it, technology can't catch everything, so communicate with your kids. If you have questions, please let me know. You're welcome to email me. I'll send all of this information and some other content that I promised I would send over to Carrie in a little bit later today. And I thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. This is wonderful. A lot of great resources. And I know Melanie too was asking for if you have any book recommendations. So we'll allow you a little bit of time to get all these great resources together, and we will share this with everybody who registered. I'll get it, and then this is an ongoing resource for our families too. So we'll post it on our YouTube channel and our Facebook. Use all that social media. Hopefully get this good information out to parents as well. Real good. So if anybody else, if you have another question you want to ask real quick, if not, we'll let Lindsay get on with her day. But lots of great comments here. Thank you. Yes, I agree, Lindsay. Such a great presentation, very helpful information. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say this too. We offer in our office once a month, we offer a training called Darkness to Light. And that training is for parents and anybody that's working with kids, actually. But it's a 2-hour training, and it talks about sexual abuse prevention and strategies to talk to your kids. It also talks about other things about like, how do we evaluate programs that our children are using to know that they're going to be safe places for them? How do we intervene in situations? How do we know what the red flags are if something's happening with our child in one of those settings? And then, how do we respond if they are making an outcry and if they're saying that something happened to them? How do we respond in a way that's supportive of them and making sure that we're getting connected to the right places and the right things? And so, we would just love to have any of the parents that are here to join us for that too.
Great information. Yes. And so this is contact Child Advocate Support Ben for any further information. And later on, we will send you this great email with links and video and PowerPoint and everything. All right. I'll let you all go. Thank you again, Lindsay.
Bye-bye.